Today, we're going to talk about a brand new TTArtisan lens, but this is not going to be your typical lens review because this is not your typical lens. This is the TTArtisan 35mm f1.4 Tilt. You can see it over here. This is an APS-C manual focus lens that it's meant to expand your creativity thanks to its tilting capabilities. And you may be asking yourself, what is it that a tilt lens is going to do for me? What is the way that it can expand my creativity? Well, it is a lens that allows you to basically tilt your plane of focus by tilting your part of the lens. You see it over here in my hands. And by doing that, you achieve something that you cannot achieve with any other lens. Yes, you can do it via software, but it's not going to be the same. And the purpose of this lens is to let you experiment as you're shooting rather than relying on a software to do it for you at a later stage. Now, before talking about the lens and before getting deeper into the review of the lens, let me get you my usual disclaimer. TTArtisan sent me this lens to review and I get to keep it. But I wasn't paid to say anything. They don't know what I'm about to publish. They didn't access the content beforehand. And as usual, I tend to have my review to be as honest as possible when it comes to lenses, whether I purchase them or I receive them from the manufacturers. That being said, before getting into the nitty-gritty of the tilt capability of the lens, let me talk about the build quality for a few seconds, because the build quality of this lens is super high. It's all metal. It's built really, really well. The only plastic part that you can see is here on the internal of the lens, but that is normal. It has a manual focus ring that is well dampened, and it better be, it's a manual focus lens. So this is the only way for you to focus with clear markings, and it's really easy to operate and precise when you're trying to focus. You also get an aperture ring. That aperture ring is not clicked, which for a lens that is not meant to be doing any video, it's kind of a bummer, but at the same time, it's sturdy enough that you're not going to accidentally change your aperture as you're using the lens. And if you see the barrel of the lens, you also have two knobs, a bigger black knob and a smaller silver knob. Now, the bigger black knob is the one that allows you, again, to tilt the lens. And you can see it tilts only part of it. And you don't have to go all the way one side or the other, while the silver knob allows you to rotate the lens around the mount without moving the mount of the lens. And it's got 15 degrees clicks so that you know where you are as you're rotating it. So this is what the lens gives you. And if you look at the back, you don't have any electronic contacts. This means that you're not going to have the EXIF data on your lens once you shoot something. So that is something you need to keep in mind. You will never be able to tell whether this was f5.6, f8. You will be able to tell between f1.4 and f8 just because of depth of field and overall rendering of the image. But with similar apertures, you're not going to be able to tell. Not a big deal. You're not shooting this lens to get your normal pictures. And since we're talking about not taking your normal picture, let's see what a tilt lens does for you. I am sure you've seen in your life those pictures where you get that miniature effect where the top of the image is very blurred, the bottom of the image is very blurred, and you only have a section of the image that is very sharp. That is a way to render the image that make it look like a miniature. And this is because once you tilt the lens, you're tilting the plane of focus. And by tilting the plane of focus, you're altering the fact that usually our eye is used to see a plane of focus that is completely parallel to the sensor or the film, depending on what you're shooting. And so once you start tilting that, you're gonna have areas that are out of focus that aren't supposed to be out of focus. So our eye perceive that as a weird thing. This is what gives you that kind of a miniature effect, because when you're shooting at the miniature, stuff that seems to be is supposed to be big, but it's very small and it's close to your lens, goes out of focus pretty fast. That is the tilt effect. And since this lens allows you to rotate around the mount, it gives you the possibility not only to tilt and just get the top of the image and the bottom of the image to be blurred, but let's just say you rotate 90 degrees, you can then have the left part of the image and the right part of the image to be blurred. If you're brave enough, I wasn't that brave, you can also go with a diagonal way of doing it because, again, you can rotate 360 degrees, so you have all the flexibility that you want, and the only limit to the creativity is your mind. I am not a super creative guy, especially when it comes to stuff like that, so I didn't find ways to be super flashy with the images that I'm showing you, but I know for a fact there's plenty of people that are way more creative than I am and will be able to create a lot of good stuff out of this lens. I want to touch a little bit on the image quality, but this is, as I mentioned, is not the typical lens review that you're going to get because this lens shoots a different type of image. But at f1.4, the lens is decently sharp, not the sharpest. But let me also tell you, this is not a lens you're going to be shooting at f1.4 all the time. And if you're planning on shooting a flat image, not using the tilt capabilities, there's plenty of options that are going to do way better for you because they're autofocus, they're optimized to be used like that. If you're getting a lens like this, and we're going to get to the price in a second, it's because you want to tilt your image. So it doesn't matter what it's doing at f1.4, and it doesn't matter when it's doing in the corners because realistically the corners are going to be blurred anyways because of the tilting mechanism. So I'm not going to dive too much into the image quality. The only thing you need to know, once you shoot at f4, 5.6, f8, the lens is plenty sharp and you don't have to worry about how, especially the center of the image, renders on your camera. And this was also on a 40 megapixel camera. So the worst test that you can possibly do. That being said, you may be thinking, yes, it's all nice, it may be fun, but you may be talking yourself out of this just because you don't want to spend the money on something that we all know you're not going to be using all the time. And if this lens was as expensive as other tilt lenses that you can find in the market, I would agree with you. But this comes at less than $200. And for less than $200, if you want to experiment with something weird, if you want to catch your viewers' attention, this is a good way of doing it, and it's not going to break the bank. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone should get something like this. It's not a lens for everyone. But if that type of shooting is interesting you, is catching your attention, if you want to experiment in that type of shooting scenario, I would say go get this one. You're not going to pay that much. If you don't like the way that type of shooting is, you can sell it and you're not going to lose that much money. But if you do like it, you're going to have a nice tool that didn't break your bank, that it's not going to be a big issue if you leave it at home when you don't think you're going to be using it. So that's the overall take on this lens. I would never recommend a lens like this for $500, $600 unless you do this for a job. And then there's lenses that were born to be professional stuff. Tilt lenses and tilt and shift lenses. We're going to talk about the shift in a later video. I hope can get very expensive if you go to the professional side of the market. This is not going to break the bank, and it's going to let you experiment without forking out too much money. Now, I'm curious to see, do you have a tilt lens? Do you want to try a tilt lens? Do you have this specific lens? How do you find shooting tilt expanded your creativity? Or if it didn't, let me know in the comments below. I'm very curious, and also curious to know whether you like these weird lenses type of reviews, just because we not always want to have the normal lens. Sometimes doing it weird kind of sparks our interest. In any case, thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!